I want to welcome everybody to Durango Diaries, the Durango Herald's bi-monthly storytelling series. I'm Amy Maestas, the senior editor of the Durango Herald. Tonight, we're honored to have 4 guests join us to talk about aspects of Native American culture and history and a little bit about the annual Hozhoni Days. It's a month of pageantry, speakers, powwowing, and celebration of cultures, and it is the college's longest standing student-led tradition. We created this event with the intention to give these storytellers a chance to speak for themselves to the community here in Durango and about an annual event with cultural significance. We also have Dr. Kathy Fine-Dare, who's a professor of anthropology and co-coordinator and professor of gender and women's studies at Fort Lewis College. She also serves as the tribal liaison for the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act grant.
Well, thank you for inviting me to come speak in this panel. It's Women's History Month, and there are several. I'm sitting here with 3 extraordinary women, and I'm honored to be doing so. You know, following the presentation of Dr. Holmes, I think many of you might ask yourselves, wow, this is so extensive what's happened in the United States with Native people. How can non-Native people, and I'm a non-Native person, I'm half Macedonian, but that doesn't resonate with people very well. How can we help, and should we even try? You know, how can we help deal with this situation? I'm white, I'm the colonizer, what could I do if nothing? And so I thought, since this is Durango Diaries, I'd give you a little bit of a personal account of how I have tried to do my part in addressing some of the concerns that we have ongoing with inequality and ongoing genocide and dispossession of Native peoples in the world. So I always ask myself, how can I work as an ally? That's the term for non-Native people to think about in dealing with Native American issues. Working as an ally means asking the question, how can I help? And then the first thing you do is you listen, and you find out ways you can help. You listen respectfully. What's most important to begin with is to learn the history. So to start with historical accounts of the complexity of this multiple intersecting situation across the world, but across these 2 continents with Native people. And then to learn to work in being an ally using principles of relationality, that we're all connected. This is all about relationships and reciprocity. In the Andes, where I mostly work in South America, one of their key principles of being an Andean person is the concept of Aini in Quechua, which is whatever is given must be given back. It doesn't have to be right away, but it has to happen. And it has to happen with humility, and then you repeat all the steps of asking questions and listening. So my story began 1983. I was working on my dissertation at the University of Illinois, and the chair of the department came through and said, there's a 1-year position at Fort Lewis College. And I said, where? What? I don't know. I'm in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. And he said they need somebody to step in for a person who was scheduled to teach a variety of classes, but especially somebody who he was teaching classes in South American anthropology. So I said, well, okay, I got to get out of here. I'd just come back from a 1.5 years working in Ecuador with National Science Foundation, Fulbright grant money. I was depressed. I thought Colorado might not hurt. And I came to Durango, and it's kind of looked like Quito, Ecuador, which is where I worked, a town that sits in with mountains around, that sits in a basin, and it felt comfortable. And my dissertation topic was that looking at people's strategies of survival, people who were classified as urban, working class people, non-native, who had native histories that had been kind of beaten out of them and their families' background because of their work as semi-slaves on haciendas that didn't end until 1963, and aspects of it continue today. And so I kind of felt at home because I didn't know a soul in Durango, but I was among indigenous people at Fort Lewis College. I hung out at what was called the Intercultural Center then, Native American Center, working with Mary Jean Mosley and Rick Wheelock and some others, and then the job became permanent. I applied for it again, and then 34 years later, I'm going to retire. But not exactly, so we'll do that. So what have I been doing 34 years? I've been teaching everything in the world that's anthropological, but two prongs of my research and teaching developed. One is, I taught for many years. It was what I was hired to teach, Native Peoples of the Andes of South America, and I'm teaching it right now. It's called Legacies of the Incas. And what I do in that class is try to, many of the students in my class are Native American, to let them know that Native American realities don't end at the Rio Grande River. They go on and on into the continents below. And then when I work in Ecuador, I've given many talks letting them know something about Native realities up here, up in North America, so I see myself as connecting those. I was on the board of the Native American Studies program, and for a while I was affiliated faculty with the Native American Studies program, and so teaching the Andes class and also a class called Native American Gender Issues. And what I've done in that class for years, I've taught it 10 or 12 times, is talk about primarily violence against Native women. It's probably one of the worst situations in the world, as Amnesty International reported in 2007. The situation of dead, missing, disappeared women. 82% of those of those incidents committed by non-Native people who can get on and off the reservation with impunity. And then we talk about two-spirit peoples, Native peoples with gender-diverse identities, transgender and so forth, and then we do quite a lot of other things, including masculinities, Native masculinities. I also, my alliance work began with Native people at Fort Lewis, not only like helping out at the Native American Center when I could, but when I was department chair for the first of two times in 1994, I got this letter saying, by the way, Fort Lewis College, there's a law that was passed in 1990 called the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, and you need to get into compliance. And I was mad. I'm like, I'm not an archaeologist. This isn't my fault. I didn't dig anything up. These aren't. But because Fort Lewis College receives federal funding, we're classified under this law as a federal museum. We needed to engage in consultation for the first time ever with tribal peoples regarding the more than 137 sets of ancestral individual human remains, and then many other objects. And this happened back in the 90s. Phil Duke and I wrote a grant. We had help with Jim Judge and other people in the department. We had consultation, but for a variety of reasons that I won't elaborate, we still didn't get into compliance. We just got partially in. So this past year, Shelby Tisdale, who's the director of the Center of Southwest Studies, and I wrote a grant to the National Park Service. We got funded to almost the maximum amount, $89,000. All that money, none of that money goes to people who work at Fort Lewis. It all goes to bring in tribal consultants and they're going to start coming on August 30th, some of them, to meet with the individuals, the ancestral individuals we still have, so that they may be reburied, and then to look at the funerary objects, sacred objects, objects of cultural patrimony, so they might be returned to tribes. So I'm still involved in this quite a bit. When we first wrote the grant, the title of the grant was Native American Graves, you know, the whole title of a thing, but we also titled it A Long-Term Dialogue with Native Peoples. And so that long-term dialogue in terms of repatriation kind of went sporadically at the college, back and forth, in and out, and we're hoping that we've resumed it again. I wrote some work. Some of my scholarship's been based on this. So in 2002, I published a book called Grave Injustice, the American Indian Repatriation Movement in NAGPRA, that's used in schools around the country and UK and Canada. And then I went and taught Native people and African American people and feminist people at the Salesian Polytechnic University in Quito, Ecuador. It's a university known for supporting Native activism. And then I did an edited book called Border Crossings, where all the people who contributed to that looked at ways that we might learn from crossing borders with all kinds of populations. And then, so some events that were involved in 2015, I and some of my colleagues in the Native American Center organized events bringing in Native people on 25 years of the Native American Graves Protection Act. And then I was appointed in 2016 chair of the Fort Lewis College NAGPRA committee, and I had 3 goals. The first one was that to bring more Native people on the committee. There were hardly any. They had put 2, Kay Holmes was one of them, and another one from physics and engineering, but I brought in several more people from the Southern Ute Indian tribe, Mountain Ute tribe, And then Mr. Clyde Benally, who's my consultant from his Diné. Second thing we had to do was compliance. So we applied, oh, here you are, hi Clyde. We applied for a grant, and we got that grant. And then policy, so the Fort Lewis policy, the revised NAGPR policy is now, as of yesterday, in the hands of the President's Cabinet. And one of the things we did in working on the policy, and Clyde was a great help with this, is we emphasized more so than ever before, we are a Native American serving institution. And that means whatever the NAGPR law says we're supposed to do, we have to go above and beyond that. The Hozhoni Days pageant is something I've been involved in for the last couple of years. I'm really glad to be doing this. One of the things that we've done with the pageant is we changed the name. It was called the Miss Hozhoni pageant. And Miss, we decided, was pretty restrictive because Miss means women who don't have children, never been married. We wanted to open that up, so it's called the Hozhoni Days pageant now. There's a history of pageantry. Some have said before, well, what does that mean? You know, pageants, that's an Anglo institution like Miss America. And it comes from boarding schools as well. Pageants were set up by boarding schools so people knew how to behave like proper women. But there's pageantry all over the Americas, and what has happened is that pageantry has become indigenized. It's become a way for women to show their power, their importance, and to completely modify the meanings of pageants. So what I'm going to do as I retire from teaching is I want to continue working with this committee. I'm continuing my work in Ecuador. One of the things I've learned from being at Fort Lewis and elsewhere is that research, and I'm going to continue my research. I'm writing a book that's got the manuscripts due pretty soon, with indigenous people, and research is a privilege. It's not a right. It's not something you get to do if you want to do science, and you have to like keep asking people and returning to people, because if you've just gone and you talk to people and you conduct a research, then you're just playing a game, and I don't want to keep playing a game, so I'll keep going down to Ecuador probably till I die. I am continuing my alliance work as well, because although I'm not teaching at Fort Lewis next year, I'm going to be continuing as the co-PI of the NAGPR grant, organizing consultations, and I'm continuing on the Miss Hozhoni committee. And so that's where I met these two women here to my left. So Alyssa Tapaha is going to speak to you about her experiences as president of Wambliota, and there haven't been that many female presidents of that organization. And then Natalia Sells, the current Miss Hozhoni, is going to talk to you about hers. So thank you very much.